Good afternoon, all. My name is Omid Forozan with Synchron. Thank you all so much for joining this afternoon. The presentation you're about to hear was recorded last week. Between now and this airing, Synchron lost one of its heroes, Rodney Gorham, who you'll learn about from Professor Peter Mitchell. Rodney passed away peacefully earlier this week. He was diagnosed with MND for 8 years with symptoms for 10 years. A participant in Synchron's Australian switch trial, Rodney had the Stentrode for 6 years and completed over 1,000 sessions with his Synchron BCI. Rodney was an inspiration and will remain in our hearts forever. Please join me in celebrating him as we begin this afternoon's program. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted you're joining us today. I'm pretty excited about what we're about to hear. The Synchron partnership with MND Australia started in Australia many years ago, and the fact that they're returning with the FOCUS-AUS Australia trial and this innovation with the brain-computer interface research is a game changer for the MND community, but also a really interesting demonstration of the research innovation capacity that we have in Australia and how that can then turn into tangible results for people living with MND. I'd like to introduce the head of clinical at Synchron, who will be hosting the webinar today, Omid Forozan.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you everyone for joining us today and for your interest in this emerging area of neurotechnology. Our mission at Synchron is centered around developing technology that may help preserve autonomy, communication, and interaction for people with living with severe neurological disease. And today's discussion is really about the intersection of neuroscience, clinical care, engineering, and lived patient experience. We're fortunate to be joined by Professor Peter Mitchell, Dr. Thanuja Dharmadasa, and Mariah Kane, who each bring an important perspective across neurointervention, MND clinical care, and assistive technology. We'll review each of their backgrounds in more details as we move through the presentation. And we're so grateful for the opportunity to share with the field where the field stands today and where we believe it may go. Thank you very much, Claire Sullivan and MND Australia, for the opportunity. We'll now play a short video that showcases what has been our learning journey since our founding days in Australia, leading up until our return to the FOCUS study. If you go to the next slide.
What if a simple thought could empower new ways to connect, communicate, and live more independently? That question has guided Synchron for over a decade.
And we're building something we think is going to be transformative.
Synchron was co-founded by CEO Dr. Tom Oxley, a neurointerventionalist specializing in treating the brain through blood vessels.
Technology capable of streaming direct thought for people who, through injury or disease, have lost the capacity to move or speak. A brain-computer interface.
It began in Australia with a mission to develop a safe and minimally invasive brain-computer interface, also called a BCI, that empowers connection and freedom for individuals living with neurological disorders affecting movement or communication. From that vision, a small founding team grew into a world-class group of experts spanning healthcare and technology. Synchron relocated to New York, completed 2 clinical trials involving 10 participants, and published groundbreaking research in some of the most respected medical journals.
Brain-computer interface is for people whose brain is still able to send out signals, but whose body is not receiving them.
Synchron is an implantable brain-computer interface. It's designed to record a person's intention to move and transmit those commands outside the body where their limbs cannot, connecting to digital devices for communication and control. What makes Synchron unique is that this entire system is implanted without the need for open brain surgery. Our procedure is a first of its kind in the BCI space. based on decades of methods that cardiologists and neurologists have already proven safe. We implant our BCI through the blood vessels using a minimally invasive approach, similar to placing a stent. This design prioritizes patient safety and will eventually allow the procedure to be performed in communities around the world, not just a handful of elite medical centers. But the most beautiful thing about this technology is how it empowers people to be themselves. The Synchron BCI is designed to restore a sense of self and connection that may have been impacted by paralysis. At its core, our technology is about giving people control over their lives, enabling communication, fostering independence, protecting privacy, and giving people the power to make their own choices. For people who can no longer move or speak, this can be truly transformative. Sending a text to a loved one, controlling the environment around you, or directing your healthcare. These actions, which are easily taken for granted, become powerful ways to live life on your own terms. Synchron has formed collaborations with some of the leading names in the consumer technology industry, like Apple and NVIDIA, to remain on the cutting edge of what's possible. The technology is still evolving, but every interaction, every click is a step toward redefining what's possible and helping people reclaim their place in the world. Our design philosophy is simple. We design with our users, not for them. By listening to their voices through thousands of hours of research and countless conversations with advocacy groups, we're developing a device that directly addresses their needs.
It was kind of a whirlwind. I was admitted into the program very quickly and was thrilled to be involved in the groundbreaking, I guess, if you will, research and development of this, the BCI.
It's exciting stuff. I mean, I talk about it as though it's every day sort of thing that you do, but I still get very excited about what it can do and what it does do. And Peter will attest to this, that we will have a 2.5 hour session. It'll go for 4 hours sometimes. Just come on, one more, we can do it. You know? So it's great. It really is.
Discover the future with us and join in on the journey at synchronbci.com.
All right. Like the video said, we design with our users, not just for them. And you saw how Phil was talking about his experience using the device. So really exciting times for us to be back in Australia in the clinical phase. Now, for this next section, we're going to have Mariah Kane. Mariah is an occupational therapist and assistive technology professional who has over 13 years of experience helping individuals with neurological conditions. While working as a neurotrained staff therapist and an assistive technology lead at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, back in the US, she treated patients in their acute care hospital, their inpatient rehab unit, and their outpatient clinic. Mariah transitioned out of her full-time therapy role at Mayo to a supplemental position in 2022 to become a care service manager for the ALS Association. She will provide perspective on day-to-day realities faced by people living with MND and how assistive technology supports function, participation, and quality of life across the care journey. She will also discuss the evolving role of emerging technologies like BCI within multidisciplinary care and the broader assistive technology ecosystem. Thank you very much today for joining us today, Mariah.
Thanks, Omid, for that introduction. I am very happy to be here to talk about the clinical experience that I've had as an occupational therapist, and I want to apologize as I get started that you will hear me slip in and out of MND and ALS just because that is the vernacular I'm used to over here in the States. So my apologies on that as we move forward. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to start with the problem. So before I kind of get into examples where I've worked with the technology and seen some of the issues fail, I want to clarify the problem has to do with the ability to have independent access, that ability to control a digital device when we want to or need to use it. For individuals living with ALS, independent access decreases as they lose the ability to move their limbs and other muscles. but that signal, that intent to move, stays in the brain the whole time. So it is the transmission of those signals from the brain to the muscle or the limb that's disrupted and leading to the paralysis and loss of access. It is here where I come in to work with patients and determine what type of assistive technology can help reestablish that independent access to the devices they want to use every day for personal needs or even work. Next slide. There's a lot of different assistive tech out there for existing solutions. So you might be familiar with an eye tracker or a voice assistant or even a physical switch. These are not competing. In fact, I have a lot of patients I work with who intertwine some of these devices because they use them for different situations. However, because all of these options require some degree of motor movement, someone with ALS will inevitably require caregiver support. They'll fall out of alignment. They will require some kind of calibration, compromise their privacy and autonomy. And as they use it, their fatigue will increase, which will limit their ability to use the device even further. So when these failures occur, we lose our independence and our autonomy. Next slide, please. So I can talk on and on, but I want to give you a really specific example that highlights where I see current technology fail because of the reliance on the motor output or that motor movement, not the intent to move. These aren't isolated incidences. Rather, they are a broad theme I've experienced as an OT working across neurological conditions. My example focuses on a gentleman I treated with ALS, and a weakness started in his arms. He was able to walk without assistance, and he had no changes to his speech. He was an avid user of his voice assistant, both within his home and on his phone to allow for independent use. However, when he came to see me, we worked to find ways where he could independently use his phone in a loud and busy environment, since he enjoyed socializing and working. His frustration centered on two different things. The first was the fact that even if he repeated his phrase or command, his device would not always hear him correctly, and at times would get stuck in a loop where he would then have to ask either a passerby or a friend or a coworker to touch his phone for him to complete the request and hopefully reset his voice access. The other was that he intentionally avoided certain tasks because he did not want someone hearing him. They didn't want his personal information shared or even for people to know what he was doing. It was something as simple as scrolling on YouTube, but to him, that was something he wanted to know, but not everybody else to know. Unfortunately, since he, with his arm weakness, had no way to transport or hold his phone, or had a way to utilize head movement or eye movement because of that ability to put the phone where he needed, he was left without a solution to help him maintain his independence throughout his day or life. The best thing we could do was try to improve the quality of his microphone through a Bluetooth headset. That way we could lessen the errors and the degree of loudness when he talked. However, that did not address his autonomy, and he continued to avoid certain actions when he knew others could hear him. I like this case too because it highlights the potential of BCI in terms of access that extends well beyond a view of a salvage therapy. It's a therapy or an opportunity to increase someone's access throughout the disease. Next slide. So as Omid had kind of said, the potential solution to these limitations with assistive technology is coming from the brain-computer interface. Is an implantable device that reads your intention to move and directly sends that signal outside the body to a digital device or computer. Now you can transmit brain signals digitally and eliminate the need for muscular control or physical movement, all things that change throughout the day and throughout the circumstance and throughout the disease. The BCI is effectively creating a brain-controlled keypad or mouse, allowing users to operate an iPad or other digital device by thinking about limb movements. Some may just have a few keys or a virtual joystick. That's where the potential I would really like to see what happens out of research just like this. Next slide. So, autonomy, independence, privacy, these are things I advocate for my patients every day. And this is exactly where I think BCI can help this community. Some really things that we see is it could be easy to learn, less fatiguing, always available. So it could take down potential caregiver burden or just that worry of being safe. It's not reliant on positioning. It's easy to use and you stay connected. The promise of BCI is not as a salvage therapy after everything else fails, but as a medical device provided to individuals living with ALS in their journey. This way, it can promote ongoing participation and independence in a meaningful way in all those daily activities that increase our quality of life. Next, we are going to play a video that illustrates how the Synchron BCI technology works to allow you the potential to access and control a digital device.
Motor signals from the brain travel to muscles, enabling daily tasks like navigating the computer with a mouse. Individuals with motor impairment retain these brain signals, but the inability to transmit them to muscles and limbs makes these everyday activities challenging or impossible. Synchron BCI, a minimally invasive device inserted into brain blood vessels, detects electrical signals related to intended movement. These signals are transmitted wirelessly outside the body and are decoded into digital actions that can be read by a computer or other technology, enabling individuals with motor impairment to regain autonomy and independence through digital control using only their thoughts. Synchron BCI marks a significant step forward in giving people with paralysis independent control of digital devices 24/7.
Right. Okay. So thank you very much, Mariah. That was really helpful. It's very important to sort of know what patients feel as they have to go through those limitations of the assistive technology that's available today in this day and age. Now, I want to take a minute to further explain what Synchron BCI is, the components of the system, and at a high level, just an overview of the system and where we are in our clinical journey. So Synchron BCI, or brain-computer interface, or BCI as we refer to it, is a neuroprosthetic. It's designed to allow the participant to interact with digital devices without using eyes, hands, voice, just using the intention to move, just using the thought to move. As you see here, there are different components. There are two different implanted components, stentrode and the transceiver device. If you go to the next slide, please. So when a person intends to move a body part, such as their hand or arm, different parts of the body, different limbs, the brain's functioning command center sends an electrical signal. The Synchron BCI is designed to read that brain signal and translate that output into a computer that can understand, just like the video that we just watched. If you go to the next slide. And everything starts with the stentrode. If you play the video, stentrode is the proprietary stent that senses the brain electrical signal. It's implanted in the vein, in a big vein that sits on top of the brain, without the need for open brain surgery. So with using procedure steps that Dr. Mitchell is going to talk about, which is sort of known today within comparable devices. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, this video shows the stentrode being inserted into the vein and deployed. The stent is then deployed inside the vein. this procedure does not need an open brain surgery. The other component that receives brain signals from stentrode and transmits outside to other devices is the transceiver that's implanted under the skin on upper right or left side of the chest area. Go to the next slide. Now, with these implanted components and a digital device connected to the system, if you go next, hit next, as the patients think about movements or have the intention to move their limbs, could be different limbs, the signal is captured with the stentrode, transmitted with the lead to the pocket device or transceiver device that sits under the skin on chest, and then the signal is translated into a digital device with a Bluetooth transfer, and that intention is basically then translated into a digital action, into a wireless digital command. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So far, we have had two different trials. We have completed two different trials. The first one in Australia, switch trial that Dr. Mitchell is going to talk about, and then command trial in the US. Both trials have passed the primary endpoint. Really, this system right now today is years of worth of development. First generations, going through the two trials, one in Australia and States, and then after those early feasibility studies and first in human studies, now we're back again in Australia with FOCUS-AUS Study. Each study helps us better understand procedural safety, long-term device performance, usability, and participant experience. And importantly, the progress in this field occurs incrementally through evidence generation and ongoing collaboration with participants and clinical team. If you go to the next slide. So now with both of those trials established the foundation, Dr. Mitchell is going to talk about the switch trial. Professor Mitchell, Director of Neurointervention at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, head at RMH of Victorian Statewide Thrombectomy Service and Deputy Director of the University of Melbourne Department of Radiology, is one of Australia's leading interventional neuroradiologists and a pioneer in endovascular brain-computer interface technology. He served as co-principal investigator of the SWITCH study, the first-in-human trial of Synchron stentrode, performing the implant procedure at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. Also pioneered in the intracranial device implantation with a transvenous approach, avoiding the need for any open cranial surgery. He has over 300 peer-reviewed publications and brings decades of expertise in neurovascular intervention to the emerging field of BCI. Professor Mitchell will discuss the evolution of neurointerventional medicine and how decades of minimally invasive neurovascular innovation created the foundation of Synchron's endovascular BCI approach. He will also provide insight into the SWITCH first-in-human study and the long-term clinical experience with implanted participants. Thank you very much for joining us today, Professor Mitchell.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate and for those kind words and kind introduction. Thank you very much. We might move to the next slide. Thank you. By way of background, when people hear of brain implants, many perceive it as a highly invasive, intrusive procedure. But really we're building on interventional neuroradiology, neurointervention, several different names, and basically it refers to using minimally invasive techniques to access the brain, usually through blood vessels, through arteries or veins. And it goes back to the 1970s when these techniques were being developed. When they were being developed, they were perceived as very experimental, unusual. The status quo didn't immediately warm to them, and it really required them to demonstrate efficacy over a long period of time and safety and good outcomes. And to give you a bit of a perspective, we now perform there are now over 300,000 thrombectomies performed per year. Our own hospital, we do over 300 thrombectomies just at one site. There's been a massive growth in this over many years. It started off with very selective endovascular access going up through blood vessels, no cut on the head, no cut on the skull, to access the inside of the head via the blood vessels that provide a pathway to that space. In the 90s, we started treating aneurysms instead of craniotomy with clipping of aneurysms. We treated them endovascularly. That was shown to be effective. Like all of these things, it takes years to amass the data and to mature these technologies. But then there's been a very rapid growth since then, and to the point now where at most centres, for example, aneurysms, the majority are treated via endovascular techniques, which back in the 70s didn't exist. The further development of these tools came in particular in 2015 with the publication of the trials looking at stroke treatment. And again, this was very novel. We'd been doing it for over a decade. We'd been developing the technique, maturing the technique, and finally we got these 5 studies all published within a very short period of time, all showing that removing the blood clot causing a stroke massively improved the chances of patients making a good recovery, to the point where this became standard of care within a year or two across the world. And it's been a game changer for stroke treatment in general, and the number needed to treat typically ranks between 3.5, 4, 5, which is higher than many surgical procedures. And these procedures have just continued to expand. So what Synchron's been doing with endovascular BCA follows the same pathway. I've known Tom since he was a trainee back at the Royal Melbourne Hospital and started doing a lot of this experimental work. And it's been developed over many, many years. You might only be seeing it the last couple of years, but it's been in development for a very long time. Might have the next slide, thank you. We went through a complex process to start the SWITCH trial, which I'm very proud to have been involved in with my other co-PI, Professor Bruce Campbell from neurology, and our neurosurgical colleague Andrew Morikoff, who's involved in the pocket, the transceiver placement. I was involved in placing the stent trode through the brain and channeling the lead. The trial was very much a first for us in a brain-computer interface, and it was done as a safety study. And I cannot ever talk about this without acknowledging and thanking the people who participated in this trial, the 4 patients who had the implant performed. It was an extremely brave thing to do. They had an open and inquiring mind, and they fortunately all had benefit from participation. The safety endpoints for the trial were looking at serious adverse events, vessel occlusion. Did putting the stent in the main vein, draining the brain, cause blockage or thrombosis? Did the device move over the months to years that it was in place? Secondary outcomes were whether good stable signals could be obtained and whether patients could use the device to assist with functional independence. Next slide, thank you. And it was a wonderful trial. We were going to recruit 5 patients. We screened 5 patients. 1 patient did not have appropriate anatomy, and so we had 4 patients who were enrolled in the trial and received the implant. The primary endpoints were device-related serious adverse events resulting in death or permanent increased disability. There were no such events. All of the secondary endpoints similarly showed 0 adverse outcomes. So it was a wonderful trials showing the proof of concept of a minimally invasive brain-computer interface, and patients all got to interact with and use the device. Next slide, please. No one has ever had a Synchron brain-computer interface longer than Rodney Gorn. He's still finding new ways to use it. Just to a bit of perspective on how this happened, the first implantation we did in August 2019, Rodney was towards the end of 2020. They were the 4 patients who had received the implant. And the timeline for this was that the publications came out. The first publication was in 2021, and the final paper was published in 2023. So we've really moved from 50 years ago, very early endovascular approaches to the brain, reducing the need for craniotomy and more invasive approaches. This has been continued on as we go now. Rodney is unequivocally the longest recipient of the BCI. It's been a wonderful opportunity to see the engagement with the process that came through having this device, and ultimately whether this device in its newer iteration can be made available to a larger number of people who would be able to benefit is important. The next slide, please. This slide just highlights some of the activities that were possible with the device, with various of the recipients of the device showing how this can be done. Environmental control, just turning on the lights, which might sound a simple activity, but clearly isn't. Healthcare, pain reports, communication, shopping. I can still remember the wonderful, our first recipient of an implant texting his group of friends using this device. Information retrieval, entertainment, and doing work and organisation. If I could move to the final slide. Thank you very much. I might just let this play if we could. This is one of the command trial recipients who kindly made this available to us to show.
Hi, my name is Mark Jackson. I received the Synchron Stentrode implant in August of 2023 and have been fortunate enough to be able to work with this BCI now for a while. I have been diagnosed with ALS since January of 2021. It was kind of a whirlwind. I was admitted into the program very quickly. And was thrilled to be involved in the groundbreaking, I guess, if you will, research and development of this, the BCI from Synchron. Really wanted to take the opportunity, and it gives me that opportunity to give back. I know, unfortunately, that ALS is one of those diseases that there's no cure for right now, but to be involved in helping others, making it easier down the road, not just for ALS patients, but for anyone who has a neurological disease that prevents them from being able to use their arms and takes away their independence. This, to me, was a great opportunity to work with a new technology that would give some of that independence back to the individual. And so I jumped on board. And the journey has been amazing. there's been a lot of firsts. There's been a lot of some disappointments. I think anytime you do research, you've got ups and downs, but the predominant force keeping it going forward is that there are positive results that have been able to help in the independence of individuals that can't use their arms. I knew that that's what I wanted to do, to use the time, whatever time I have left. I mean, it could be 6 months, it could be 6 years from now, I don't know. But whatever time I have left, I wanted to be able to use it to help further technology, to help further understanding of how a brainwave computer interface can make a difference in not just my life, but the lives of many, many, many others.
Again,
All right.
I'll pass on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mitchell. Thank you very much for the wonderful, wonderful talk and very informative. Thanks for conveying the experience from the patients that you implanted, as the first time with a device. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have
Dr. Tanuja Dharmadasa,
who's a clinician researcher at the Fleury, as well as a neurologist and clinical neurophysiologist at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. She has a passion for improving care for people living with motor neuron disease, MND. After completing her PhD in MND at the University of Sydney, she undertook advanced clinical research training at the University of Oxford as an NHMRC Early Career Fellow. Tanuja combines cutting-edge brain imaging and diagnostic tools to better understand how MND develops and how we can treat it more effectively.
Dr. Dharmadasa
We'll focus on the patients surrounding Synchron BCI technology and MND care, including how these systems may support communication, autonomy, and day-to-day interactions. She will also speak to the importance of multidisciplinary care, home integration, and patient-centered innovation as this field continues to evolve. Thank you very much, Tanuja, for joining us today.
Thanks, Omid. And we're really very excited, as everyone has said, that Synchron is returning to Australia with the FOCUS-AUS study, and I'm very excited to be leading this trial with Peter Mitchell at Royal Melbourne, and really listen to this kind of experience. But today, I'm going to talk mostly about the patient experience and perspectives, really trying to understand who are the participants for this trial, what is our study timeline, and really what are they going to experience. So next slide, please. So really just talking a little bit about the participants. We know that we've talked about it a little bit before, but we're really looking at people with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis primarily, but also MND, which is interchangeable, and other etiologies. But the really main kind of find of it is people who have bilateral upper limb weakness. And that really means people who have really limited or no functional use of their arms or their hands. And this is kind of the key core criteria of patients that have to be involved in this. Cognitively, because this involves learning and retraining, they do have to be able to participate and also motivated to kind of gain independent access, digital access. And perhaps less intuitively from a clinical trial perspective, they do have to be supported by a caregiver, because this study really does involve engaged caregiver activity. The caregivers, as we know, really help with things like transportation to study visits, but also for this particular trial, it's really important because they also assist with charging the system and the components. They have to be present with the training sessions, and they also have to assist and help assist with the communication and troubleshooting, really. So because of this, the caregivers considered really an integral part of that pre-screening process and willingness to really be part of that process. So looking at the study timeline, what does that actually involve? Well, screening and the baseline visits will take about 30 days, and that involves multiple things, including clinic visits, imaging, particularly a CT scan imaging of the brain and the vessels, blood tests, as well as an evaluation of the home. And then there'll be the minimally invasive implant at the hospital, which requires at least a minimum overnight stay. After the healing and recovery process is when the actual training of this device and home use of the device begins. And after that, that period, and when that period begins, that involves about 9 hours a week during the first year. And I'll talk a little bit later about what that training actually is and what that actually looks like in real time. Following that, there's active follow-up by the Synchron team for about 12 months, and then an extended safety follow-up as well. Following that. So what is it actually that is being measured by this? So very broadly, there are two main things that are being measured. Firstly, measurement of safety. So this is a device safety trial. So the main broad thing is really, is the device safe? Is the procedure related to this device safe? And are there going to be any adverse events? That will also involve having 2 more CT scans within that first year as part of that safety assessment. And the second main thing really that this clinical trial is looking at is how functional is this? How functional is the actual BCI? Can it generate these digital motor outputs, and how effective is it at actually independent control of these digital devices over time? Next slide, please. So a little bit about the training. I guess the important thing and concept about Synchron's BCI is that the learning happens with the system and with the individual. So it's a symbiotic system in that training happens in a very mutual fashion. So over time, the tasks that are involved really help the system learn those really unique brain signals, and you as an individual participating learn how to use the feedback from the system more effectively. So that obviously involves a lot of consistency, a lot of support and practice. And the other important thing, I guess, of this is that the training does occur in the home environment. So it really does move that technology from doing it in the hospital setting or in the lab setting straight into your daily life. Next slide, please. So this is an example of one of the training tasks. So in this particular example, for example, that you can see on the screen, your goal is really to try and perform certain actions, or at least just the attempted movements when the arrow moves. So if in this example, it's squeezing your hand or squeezing the left hand that you have to think about. And those actions can then later be translated into clicks and button presses. So one of the most important aspects is that participants are kind of performing these real world type activities, and they're really designed in a way to support that daily interaction. So rather than just being things that have been formulated in the lab or formulated as specific things to be done as part of a clinical trial, they're things that really move beyond that to be more integrated into your daily life. And for people who are living with MND, we all know that maintaining that ability to engage with both themselves but also with others, and that direct aspect of their care is such an important aspect of quality of life. Next slide, please. And as the training goes on, there are different things and more broader engagement of the environment and more broader engagement of that digital interaction. So, for example, when the training does progress, participants may start using more directional and navigation type tasks. So the task that you can see on the screen there is really trying to perform actions that can move that target or move a particular cursor or a select button from a grid to another area. So that can include things like cursor movement, but also things like screen navigation, interaction with different digital interfaces. So it's a really kind of platform in which learning continues to build. And next slide, please. So one of the other really important aspects is that those notifications and alerts that we know that are really important from a patient to a caregiver is supported in a screenless way. And this is really something I think that is important, as we know, for people living with MND, that ability to maintain intentional interaction and initiate interaction with a caregiver. And that's the kind of broader philosophy around preserving that participation and control wherever possible, and something that at the moment we require a screen to do. So this is something that really will have meaningful impact on quality of life, and this concept of screenless notification. Next slide, please. And so finally, I think the main thing broadly across all of these training modules and these examples that I've kind of given is communication. So we know communication is probably one of the most important priorities for lots of people living with MND, and certainly as clinicians we see that how impactful that is for both patients but also for families. So the longer term goal of technologies such as Synchron's BCI is really to help preserve this, and that ability to express intentions, to be able to connect with others, and to really remain engaged in daily life. So this field is definitely still an evolving area, but the progress here is really has been kind of incredible to see. So this is something really important, but also it's important because it's moving directly in alignment with the wishes of the lived experience community, which is something we find extremely important, of course, from the clinical care aspect. So very lastly, just want to mention the FOCUS-AUS registry. So Synchron has launched this registry. It's maintained by an independent clinical third party. So any individuals who are interested in actually learning more about Synchron or the specific study can have a look at the registry by visiting that website on the screen. Just a caveat is that not everybody who expresses interest will qualify. So final eligibility will be can only really be confirmed after that formal screening process that I talked about that happens with our study team. But if you'd prefer to also reach out to a representative more directly, then there's information in the chat for instructions on email or telephone on how to do that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tanuja. Thanks for the wonderful talk and helping us understand patient session and training and better sort of unwrap what happens at patient home. So with this, everyone, we are closing the call. Before we conclude, I want to sincerely thank our presenters today, Professor Peter Mitchell,
Dr. Tanuja Dharmadasa,
and Mariah Kane, for sharing their expertise and perspectives with us. We're also incredibly grateful again to Claire Sullivan and the team at MND Australia for partnering with us and helping to make today's discussion possible. Most importantly, I want to recognize and thank our participants, Mark, Phil, Rodney, Graham, and all our patients along with their families. Their willingness to participate, share their experience, and help advance this field is what makes progress possible. Finally, thank you to the broader MND and clinical communities for welcoming us back with such warmth, openness, and collaboration. This work moves forward because of partnership, trust, and shared commitment to improving the lives of people with MND. If you have any questions, this is the time we're going to enter the Q&A session and answer the questions that we're going to receive from the participants of the call. Thanks for the attention.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Uh, we're moving to the Q&A session. I'm going to ask my colleague who has deep passion about ALS, MND, and BCI, Chris Ranby, to help me moderate this session. Thanks, Tanuja, for staying with us, and Mariah. Thank you.
Of course, and everyone, thank you so very much. We have a number of fantastic questions in the chat, so let's go ahead and get right to them, shall we? The first question, we'll send this over to Omid. Does the chest unit implant have any consequences or interactions for patients who would require ongoing chest x-rays, CT scans, or MRIs?
X-rays and CTs are fine. MRI should be avoided right now. For now, it's an active area of development. We're working on MRI compatibility. That would require tests that are underway, and will be completed soon.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. And I think, Omid, this will be a great one for you too. I've seen some chatter on social media that Synchron was all set to start a clinical trial at Sunnybrook Hospital in Canada, but withdrew only 24 hours out from this person's particular appointment. When inquiring, Synchron had not only withdrew from Sunnybrook, but from Canada overall. Can you clarify whether the reasons behind it have any impact on the prospects of success for the Australian trial? If a similar issue were to occur here, what processes are in place to ensure participants are informed openly and promptly? For those volunteering their time and commitment to clinical research, transparency is of great importance. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the question. This is a very great question. The Canadian decision was driven by the realities of matching the trial's specific eligibility criteria to the available patient population in Canada, not by the science of the device or the quality of the relationship with the partners. We know the timing affected people who had committed their time and trust, and we take that seriously. Since then, we have worked to address it directly, including personal outreach from our CEO, from myself, from the team, to the affected individuals and families. We value the relationships we've built across the Canadian ALS community with patients with ALS and their families, the ALS Society of Canada, and the CALS network. And we remain committed to evaluating how and when a responsible Canadian reentry can occur. The situation in Australia, I want to mention, it's fundamentally different. We have already conducted clinical work in Australia. In fact, we actually started in Australia, and we have an established track record with these same investigators and the sites, and we're developing to do even more. That existing relationship and operational experience put the Australian program on a very different footing. And like always, for people volunteering their time and commitment to research, that openness is something we really hold ourselves to, and we're going to be transparent at every step of the way of the progress of developing the trial in Australia and any other region.
Thank you, Omid. Dr. Dharmadasa, this looks like a great question for you. I don't have ALS, but have functional impairment from a stroke. Can I still join the registry, and would I be eligible for FOCUS-AUS?
Yeah, that is a really great question. So I guess at the moment, the current trial, as we've been talking about, is really focused. We've really focused on ALS MND, but the broader eligibility, but also the broader scope for this device is really anyone with upper limb paralysis. And that would then therefore kind of meet the criteria if both sides, so both arms, have that kind of functional impairment. So one thing with stroke that we usually know is that it's usually unilateral. So that's something that we'd have to have a look at. But really, upper limb paralysis on both sides is the main criteria, even in this current trial.
Thank you, Dr. Dharmadasa. Mariah, this looks like a great question for you. I'm interested to find out how the control over the device occurs. Is it via switch scanning settings on the device or other accessibility features?
Thanks, Chris.
I think Dr. Dhamardasa explained some of it, but I want to go a little more conceptual in the sense of where I see BCI, whether it's switch scanning or multiple switch scanning, cursor control. I look at it to that, especially that launching of a function without looking at the screen, that do not think of it in just isolated, but how it can work with devices across and access across. So take the example I said, with this device, could you use it then to pair it with voice, pair it with something else too, to help you navigate what you're doing? Right now, all of us day to day don't use one access method, right? Some of us use our voice, use our hands, we use a mouse, we use a keyboard. What BCI, the potential it brings as we learn more, is that it can be used to give you access throughout with different types of access. And I use access a lot, I apologize. But what I'm trying to say is that it gives you this ability to not be limited to one thing either as you're transitioning, and then have that thing that's always reliable because you don't lose your intent to move. So I don't know if that answered it, but yeah, switch scanning would be definitely one of the ways it could be used.
Mariah, thank you so much. And we do know that we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll continue to go through these great questions that we have here. So the next question is for Omid. For those receiving the Stentrode, is the implanted neuroprosthetic designed where most future improvements come from software and external hardware, or are there expected generational differences in the implant that could limit access to future capabilities without another procedure? Thank you for the question.
Yeah, most future improvements come through software. With no new procedure or even a hospital visit needed, the implant is a one-time event. The capability you experience later is driven by decoding software and external systems that can be updated over time. So the thought is, with this generation of device, you would not need another procedure to get more capabilities. There's going to be ongoing improvements with the current system through the software updates.
Thank you. Omid, we'll stay on you for this next question. Are the command models pre-trained or entirely trained on individual participant data?
Great question. Comes from someone having BCI background. We've tried both approaches. We can train a model entirely on an individual participant's data, and we can also start from a generalized model. And we've tried both in command. Depending on the goal, we can have both.
Thank you. Dr. Dharmadasa, we'll give this one over to you. How many participants are you taking for this trial, and when will they commence, as I have ALS?
Yeah, really great question. So for this current trial, the capacity for participants is about 10, but up to 30 people. And as Omid has also talked about, there's a few different sites that are happening globally across the world. I guess the main thing really is the screening process and the registry are really good ways to, well, I should say, firstly, the registry is a really good way to register your interest. So if you do have ALS or any other conditions that would seem to fit the criteria, then register your interest, and we can always have a chat, and we'll always reach out and discuss that with you directly.
Thank you. We just have a few more. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions. Just wondering, what is the typical lifespan of a Stentrode, and at what point would it normally be expected to be replaced, if at all? Omid, would you like to take that one?
Oh, is that for me? This is a permanent implant. This is not meant to be taken out. And it's designed to be in the patient.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Dr. Dharmadasa, we'll come back to you we can actually tie in two questions for this from different people. So the first question is, will lower limb issues eventually be included in the study? And then part two from a different individual, what are the costs involved in participating in the procedure?
So the second question, I'll answer first. So there's no cost for the individual. This is part of a clinical trial. So, there's no kind of out-of-pocket cost to be involved, but it just involves, as per all clinical trials, it just involves the kind of clinical screening process. It sometimes involves hospital stays and outpatient appointments, but that's all covered, so nothing to the individual. The second question, and Omid will probably also jump in here, but I guess these are kind of evolving space, really, an evolving concept. So the first, I guess, tick box and first milestone is to see, does it help with people's function of their arms? And that's something that we use, I guess, all the time. It's something that, from a quality of life perspective, from communication perspective, is probably kind of one of the priorities of quality of life and gaining function. But as these things evolve, then different areas of function are certainly things that the BCI type technology would look to try and incorporate. And Omid, you might have a bit more in terms of the specifics for Synchron in this space.
No, that's spot on. You nailed it. Yeah.
All right, we'll go to one final question. Dr. Dharmadasa, I think this would be great for you. What about traveling with the implant? Is it similar to traveling with a pacemaker, for instance?
Yeah, so traveling with the implant really isn't necessarily a problem. I think, if the question is about things like airport security and scanning and things like other medical devices, as you've alluded to, with pacemakers and even things like hip and knee replacements, anything with kind of a metal type of device, there are ways that, we can, there's ways that, of course, airport security and other places can incorporate this. So not an issue. And also from a flying perspective, that's not thought to be an issue. The one concept that is a little bit parallel is things like stents for clinical issues such as heart stents, and we have stents sometimes put in the brain for different things. And in those situations as well, flying is not a preclusion. So similarly, this is based on a very kind of similar framework, and so it follows a very similar procedure and protocol.
Thank you. Omid?
All right. So no more questions?
I think that is all the time that we have for questions. And again,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for the insightful questions and for your time. Omid, please take us home.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining our webinar. Thank you very much, Tanuja and Mariah and Chris, for running the Q&A. Just the most important thing I want to emphasize before we close and wrap up the call is make sure to join the community if you think, or if you want to learn more about our system, or if you think you or your loved one could be part of the trial, Synchron trial, make sure to join the community and learn more and be part of our journey. And the website for that is synchronbci.com. I think links are all over the place, in the webinar link and everywhere, but synchronbci.com. Visit, and looking forward to see you there. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.